Okay, so boom, my husband and I attended a wedding. It was his kind of cousin-niece's wedding. I'm not sure how to describe the relationship, but they were close growing up. The wedding was a bit unique. There was a brunch before the actual ceremony with the bride and groom. Then for an hour, the wedding party left to get ready while all the guests were still at brunch. After that, the actual ceremony and the real reception were supposed to happen. I thought everything was normal. At the brunch, the couple looked happy, excited, and a little nervous, maybe. My husband had told me there had been a little drama leading up to the wedding because the groom's family insisted that the groom's ex should attend the wedding because they have a good relationship. The ex is an emergency medical technician, and she apparently saved the mother-in-law's life once. The bride didn't want the ex to attend, but she caved in. At the actual ceremony, as you might have guessed, the bride never showed. After a few minutes of awkward silence with the music playing as we waited for the bride's father came and told everyone she left. The groom was crying, the mother-in-law was screaming. It was such a huge mess. At the reception, they basically just told people to take to-go boxes of food so it didn't go to waste. Since a lot of family was in town for the wedding, the bride's side of the family was hosting a reunion. At the reunion, the bride said the reason she left the groom at the altar was because at the brunch, the ex told her that she slept with the groom and apparently showed the bride an intimacy tape she made with the groom. The bride was distraught and left because she didn't want to marry a cheater. The groom's side of the family was slandering the bride on every social media platform possible, so the bride's side decided to fire back, and they were publicly accusing the groom of cheating on her. It was just a big shitstorm. The groom came to the bride's house to try and clear things up. So the groom didn't actually cheat on the bride. The intimacy tape was from years and years ago. The groom's appearance just hadn't changed that much. So the bride believed the ex when she said it was recent. The ex was just trying to break them up. The ex confessed to it too. To my surprise, instead of everyone being angry at the ex, everyone turned on the bride. Her family was pissed at her for wasting money, being gullible, and not letting the groom defend himself first. Everyone was yelling at her. I thought it was crazy, so I spoke up in her defense. I would have believed it too if there was video evidence, plus the fact that she was practically forced into having the ex attend their wedding. Now the whole family is against me and the bride, and it's so awkward. Everyone is acting cold. My husband is upset because he now feels like if someone accused him of cheating on me, I'd just take their word for it. But I feel that's completely unfair. Now for an update. Okay, so my hubby came back to the hotel room and I showed him the post because he knows I like using Reddit. I mentioned a specific comment to him where one Redditor asked me how we are sure the tape is old and that the groom and ex aren't just covering their affair up by lying and saying it's old. I told my husband, and at first he laughed, but he started to think about the whole situation, I guess. While hubby was still at the bride's house trying to help with the situation after I left, the environment was getting too much for me, so I went back to the hotel. The groom had been groveling to the bride. Even though he was exonerated by the ex admitting it was fake, he was still being very apologetic, which threw my husband off a bit. Like even though he maintained he didn't cheat. Instead of the groom being angry about being left at the altar and publicly humiliated, he seemed to just want the wife to forgive him. I thought this would be normal because the groom probably feels horrible about allowing the ex to ruin the day and hurt the wife like that. But my husband said it was unusual behavior for the groom. Apparently, the groom is the high horse type, and he would never apologize for a mistake that wasn't his. Husband knows the groom better than me, so my husband thinks it's plausible that the groom did cheat by the way he's acting. But he's not going to bring it up because of how high tensions are, and it might just make things worse. I also explained how and why I felt like my husband was being unfair to me by saying he thinks I'd believe anyone who accused him of cheating on me. He apologized and told me he was just stressed out earlier, and he feels like we wasted money on this trip and haven't seen our kid for days over this wedding that got blown up over a lie. The bride texted me, thanking me for defending her. Most of the slandering social media posts were taken down. The ex posted on social media, playing victim. Well, not really, but she's posting like heartbreak stuff and those freaking depressed Bart Simpson memes at her big age. The groom's mother pulled up to the bride's house after I left and was threatening to burn the place down because she was mad the bride humiliated her son over a lie. Because it was such a huge wedding, he had many co-workers and stuff there. I feel like I'm missing something. but I'm tired, and it's been a long-ass day. To add plus question, a few people are saying I should show this post to the bride, but I'm a bit scared she won't react well to me putting her business online because I don't know her that well. But at the same time, I feel like she might appreciate that most people are on her side. But also, I don't really want her to see my conspiracy theory about how the husband actually cheated on her, because there's no actual proof. Should I? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Not the idiot, you are right, and that family is disgusting. It may have taken a lie about cheating to make her wake up, but she is absolutely right not to go through with marrying into that family. Her future husband is the one who should have been fighting his own family to keep the ex out. He didn't. He isn't worth marrying. I'd be cutting your husband's family out of my life, not the cousin, if this is how they act. Comment 2. Not the idiot. As you say, it sounds logical that the bride could be fooled. And it's bizarre no one's mad at the ex. I guess they would rather the groom have married her? Let this be a warning to you. It sounds like to your husband's family, you will never be family to them. At the first sign of trouble, they'll toss you under the bus with glee. Now, for the update. Thanks for reading my last post. So, after all the drama at the wedding, things have only gotten more complicated. 2 weeks ago, my husband and I were still reeling from the fallout. The bride, who I'll call B, reached out to me again. She was in a really bad place emotionally. She felt betrayed by everyone, including her own family. They were still mad at her for believing the ex and leaving the groom at the altar. B was staying with a friend because she couldn't bear to be at home with her parents constantly berating her. She asked if we could meet up for coffee, and I agreed. When we met, B looked exhausted. She told me she hadn't been sleeping well and was having nightmares about the wedding. She was also worried about her future. She had quit her job a few months before the wedding to focus on planning it, and now she was jobless and feeling hopeless. She confided in me that she was considering moving to another city to start fresh, but she was scared to leave everything behind. Meanwhile, my husband was still acting weird. He kept bringing up the groom's behavior and how it didn't sit right with him. He even started digging into the groom's past, trying to find any evidence that he might have cheated. I told him to let it go, but he was obsessed. He said he couldn't stand the idea of B being hurt even more if the groom was lying. Then something unexpected happened. The ex, who I'll call E, reached out to B and asked to meet up. B was hesitant but agreed, hoping to get some closure. They met at a public park, and B recorded the conversation on her phone. E admitted that she had lied about the intimacy tape being old. She said she had been seeing the groom on and off for the past year, and that he had promised to leave B for her. When he didn't, she decided to ruin the wedding out of spite. B was devastated. She called me right after the meeting, crying and saying she didn't know what to do. I told her to send me the recording, and I played it for my husband. He was furious. He said we needed to tell B's family and the groom's family the truth. I agreed, but I was worried about how they would react. We decided to go to B's parents' house first. When we got there, her parents were still angry and didn't want to listen to us. But when we played the recording, their faces changed. They were shocked and apologized to B for not believing her. They said they would support her in whatever she decided to do next. Next, we went to the groom's house. His mother answered the door and looked like she wanted to slam it in our faces. But when we told her we had proof that the groom had been cheating, she let us in. We played the recording for her and the groom's face turned white. He tried to deny it at first, but when we told him we had more recordings, we didn't. He finally admitted to everything. The groom's mother was livid. She started yelling at him and saying he had ruined everything. The groom just sat there looking defeated. My husband and I left, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. B decided to move to another city after all. She said she needed a fresh start and couldn't stay in a place where everyone knew what had happened. She thanked me for standing by her and said she would keep in touch. As for my husband and me, things have been tense. He's been distant and spends a lot of time on his phone, which makes me suspicious. I confronted him about it, and he said he was just trying to stay updated on the situation, but I can't shake the feeling that something is off. A few days ago, I found out why. My husband had been messaging E. He said he wanted to get more information about the groom's cheating, but I think there's more to it. I confronted him and he got defensive. He said I was being paranoid and that he was just trying to help B. But I don't believe him. Now I'm left wondering if my marriage is in trouble. I don't know if I can trust my husband anymore. I feel like everything is falling apart and I don't know what to do. Thanks for reading. Am I the idiot for cutting off my mother after she refused to accept my adopted son? My husband and I fostered for 6 years. Last year, we had a baby placed with us that had been left at a safe haven location. He was only 2 weeks old at the time. Eventually, we were approved to adopt him. Most of our family was very supportive, except for my mother. She suddenly made it clear that she'd never view this baby as her grandchild. This came out of nowhere, as she had always been kind to our foster children. But for some reason, she drew the line and said blood is what makes a family. This was heartbreaking enough, as we love and care for our son. We know adoption comes with trauma, and especially how he was placed, there may be lingering feelings as he grows up. We're studying all we can to help make sure we can guide him through those feelings. We certainly don't need anyone else making him feel less than or not a part of our family. And on another level, my husband was unofficially adopted himself. He came from a crappy home life. His best friend's mom noticed, took him under her wing. He spent most of the week at their place. She fed and clothed him. He no longer speaks to his biological parents, but his best friend's family has become our family. Our son will forever know the best friend as Uncle and his mom, Nana. So, safe to say, my mom's words hurt my husband given his own experience tied with the double whammy of what my mom was saying about our son. And yes, she is aware of all of this and still said it in front of him. She never expressed her feeling on adoption until then. I tried to talk to my mom about this, but she stood firm. She'd never view him on the same level as my brother's biological kids. After discussing it further, my husband and I realized we can't force anyone to view our son as family. And because I don't want my son or husband hurting, I went no contact with my mom. I speak with the rest of my family. She was upset when I told her we were going no contact, but we didn't have a huge discussion about it until recently. My mom was at a wedding for a distant relative. I was there alone as it was a child-free event, so my husband stayed behind to watch our son. I planned on ignoring my mom and having a good time. At one point during the reception, I was outside the venue to call my husband and check on how things were going. My mom came outside when I was finishing up. I went to walk away and she told me I hurt her by cutting her off. I asked if her stance had changed. She said no. I replied, I can't make her want to be my son's grandmother. I can't make her see that family isn't blood. But then she can't expect me, who has an adopted child along with a husband who was more or less adopted himself, to want to be around her. If she can choose whose family, I can choose too. I then said today wasn't about us, and went inside. My father has informed me that I just should have walked away as well, and that I was incredibly petty. My mom still wants to be in our lives, and that's what should matter. Not that she won't view him as family. Am I the jerk? To add, going to answer some frequently asked questions. 1. Yes, my mom has admitted he wouldn't be treated the same as her biological grandkids. 2. Our son is biracial. I won't be ignorant and say this can't be a reason, though I do genuinely believe if we adopted a white baby, she'd feel the same. I think it's just well, this doesn't help, which gave us all the more reason to want to protect him. 3. I was low contact with my dad as, originally, he didn't seem to support her. Now I'm going no contact. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. As a kid who was adopted and constantly told I wasn't a real family member with the added implication that I'm fundamentally unlovable, thank you. The stance of your mother is incredibly cruel and your son doesn't need that around him. Not the AHNTA. Comment 2. LOL, your mom is on another planet. I'll never consider your baby to be part of the family, but I find it very hurtful that you won't give me free access to your life. Does she even realize how entitled she sounds? Not the AHNTA. Now for the update. Thanks for all the comments on my last post. 3 days ago, I got a call from my brother. He wanted to talk about our mom and the whole situation. He said he understood why I went no contact, but felt that maybe there was a way to mend things. I was skeptical, but agreed to meet him for coffee. When we met, he told me that our mom had been struggling with some health issues, and that might be why she was acting out. He didn't go into specifics, but it made me wonder if there was more to her behavior than just stubbornness. Later that day, I got a call from my dad. He was upset that I had gone no contact with him too. He said he felt caught in the middle and just wanted the family to be together. I told him that as long as Mom refused to accept our son, I couldn't be around her. He tried to argue, but I stood firm. It was a tough conversation, and I could tell he was hurt, but I had to prioritize my son's well-being. The next day, my husband and I took our son to the park. It was a beautiful day, and we wanted to enjoy some family time. While we were there, we ran into my mom's best friend. She hadn't seen our son since he was a baby and was thrilled to see how much he'd grown. She asked about my mom and seemed genuinely surprised when I told her about the no-contact situation. She said she would talk to my mom and try to help her see things differently. I appreciated her offer but didn't hold out much hope. That evening, I got a text from my mom. She said she wanted to meet and talk. I was hesitant but agreed to meet her at a neutral location. When we met, she seemed different, more vulnerable. She admitted that she had been struggling with the idea of adoption because of her own past. She revealed that she had given up a baby for adoption when she was very young and had never told anyone, not even my dad. This was a huge shock to me. She said that seeing me adopt brought up all those old feelings, and she didn't know how to handle it. This revelation forced me to make a hard choice. I could either try to understand her pain and work towards mending our relationship, or I could continue to protect my family by keeping her at a distance. I told her I needed time to process everything, and left the meeting feeling more conflicted than ever. The next day, I talked to my husband about what my mom had told me. He was supportive but also wary. He said that while he understood her pain, it didn't excuse her behavior towards our son. We agreed that we needed to protect our family first and foremost, but also recognized that this new information added a layer of complexity to the situation. As I was processing all of this, I got a call from my brother again. He said he had talked to our mom and that she was willing to go to family therapy to work through her issues. This was a surprising turn of events, and I wasn't sure how to feel about it. On one hand, it showed that she was willing to make an effort, but on the other hand, I wasn't sure if therapy could change her deeply ingrained beliefs. I decided to give it a try. We had our first family therapy session 2 days ago. It was intense and emotional. My mom opened up about her past, and I could see how much pain she had been carrying all these years. The therapist helped us navigate the conversation, and by the end of the session, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to move forward. However, the session also brought up a lot of unresolved feelings for me. I realized that I had been carrying my own pain and resentment towards my mom for a long time. The therapist suggested that I might need individual therapy to work through my own issues, and I agreed. In the meantime, my husband and I have decided to keep our distance from my mom while we all work through our issues. We're focusing on our son and making sure he feels loved and accepted. It's been a challenging few days, but I feel like we're making progress, even if it's slow. Thank you for reading. Am I the idiot for refusing to be a traditional wife and choosing my career over my husband's demands for background? I am a 24-year-old female and not Nigerian, while my husband is 27-year-old male and Nigerian. We come from different backgrounds. My husband's family is strict and traditional, while I am not. Our marriage is not traditional, and we are both okay with that. I earn a higher salary than my husband, which allows us to have a wealthy lifestyle that his job alone could not provide. Additionally, I am not fond of cooking or cleaning, but my husband happily takes care of those tasks. Despite his family pressuring us about having children, we actually do not want to have any. Before marrying my husband, he asked me to pretend to be a traditional housewife around his parents so that we could get married. Given that I am not Nigerian, I feared that his parents would not accept our union. However, when I expressed my desire to marry their son in order to care for him, cook, clean, and raise his children, they agreed. Keeping this promise has been easy. We only see his parents 2-3 times a year, usually at their house. They are unaware of my work and believe that our lifestyle is solely supported by my husband's job. Recently, we had planned a 5-day visit to his parents' house. I took time off work as usual for these visits, and prepared by practicing cooking Nigerian dishes and acting as the perfect housewife. However, a few days before our visit, my mother-in-law called to inform us that she was unwell with a common cold and suggested that we reschedule our visit to avoid getting sick. She tends to be dramatic, but we agreed and postponed the visit to 2 weeks later. Unfortunately, This conflicted with a work conference I had been selected to attend, a significant opportunity for me. The conference would require a 2-day absence, and I was determined not to miss it. I informed my husband that he would need to reschedule our visit with his parents since I couldn't miss the conference for anything. He argued that his parents would not be willing to reschedule and suggested that I should just miss my thing. This upset me greatly because the conference was a tremendous honor, and I had eagerly anticipated it for months. He reminded me of my promise and how I would have to sacrifice attending the conference. Refusing to back down, I attended the conference and later went to his parents' house, claiming that I had visited my unwell mother. This angered his parents, who believed that my imaginary sick mother could have waited and that my husband should exert more control over me. Upon returning home, my husband was furious, accusing me of breaking our promise. I later overheard him speaking to his brother in Hausa, expressing regret for marrying me and contemplating divorce, even though he had not voiced any of this to me. Now for an update. Reddit, what should I do? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. It sounds like he is using you for your money. He gets to benefit from it by living a life of wealth and leading his parents to believe that it is all from his hard work while you stay home and cook. To heck with that. He should be proud of you and want to shout it from the rooftops. Mom and Dad, look at my amazing wife. I am so proud of her. She was chosen to attend a leadership conference because of all of her hard work, and I am in awe of her continued accomplishments. That is a supportive man. Leave him. Find yourself a man who supports you and doesn't want you to shrink yourself to make himself look bigger. Comment 2. Not the idiot. He was extremely upset at me saying I broke our promise. You didn't break anything. You promised to pretend to be a traditional housewife only when I'm around his parents. You weren't around his parents. You were at your work conference, advancing your career to benefit yourself and that spineless piss baby you call a husband. Reddit, what should I do? Cut your losses and hope you signed a prenup before you hitched yourself to a pathetic, misogynistic baby. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, a lot has happened since my last post. After the conference, things got really tense between my husband and me. He barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was cold and distant. I tried to talk to him about what I overheard, but he brushed it off, saying I misunderstood. I knew I hadn't, but I didn't push it further. I thought maybe giving him some space would help. 2 days later, my husband received a call from his parents. They wanted us to visit them immediately, saying it was urgent. We packed our bags and left the next morning. The car ride was silent, and I could feel the tension building up. When we arrived, his parents were waiting for us in the living room. They looked serious, and I knew something was up. His father started by saying they were disappointed in me for not prioritizing the family visit. He said that my actions showed a lack of respect for their traditions, and that I was not fulfilling my role as a wife. I tried to explain the importance of the conference, but they wouldn't listen. They insisted that family should always come first, no matter what. Then, his mother dropped a bombshell. She said that since I couldn't fulfill my duties as a wife, they had found someone who could. They introduced a young woman, a distant relative, who they believed would be a better match for my husband. They suggested that my husband should consider taking her as a second wife or even replacing me altogether. I was shocked and hurt. I looked at my husband, hoping he would defend me, but he just sat there, silent. I felt betrayed and alone. I couldn't believe that his parents were trying to replace me and that my husband wasn't standing up for me. That night, I confronted my husband. I asked him if he really wanted to replace me with someone else. He finally opened up and admitted that he was torn. He loved me, but he also felt immense pressure from his family to conform to their expectations. He said he didn't know what to do, and that he felt trapped between his love for me and his duty to his family. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I couldn't believe that our marriage had come to this. I told him that I couldn't stay in a marriage where I was constantly being compared to someone else, and where my worth was determined by how well I could cook and clean. I said that if he couldn't stand up for me, then maybe we weren't meant to be together. The next morning, I packed my bags and left. I went to stay with a friend for a few days to clear my head. During that time, I thought a lot about our relationship and what I wanted for my future. I realized that I couldn't keep pretending to be someone I'm not, just to please his family. I needed to be true to myself and find someone who would love and accept me for who I am. When I returned home, my husband and I had a long talk. We both agreed that our marriage wasn't working and that it was best for us to part ways. It was a difficult decision, but we knew it was the right one. We decided to file for divorce and go our separate ways. As for the fallout, it was tough. My husband's family was furious and blamed me for the breakup. They said I had brought shame to their family and that I was a bad influence on their son. My own family was supportive, but they were also disappointed that my marriage had ended in such a way. I had to deal with a lot of emotions during this time. I felt guilty for not being able to meet my husband's family's expectations, but I also knew that I couldn't sacrifice my own happiness and identity for them. I started seeing a therapist to help me process everything and to work on rebuilding my self-esteem. Looking back, I realized that there were signs from the beginning that our marriage might not work out. My husband and I came from very different backgrounds, and while we tried to make it work, the cultural differences and family expectations were too much for us to overcome. I also learned that I needed to be more assertive and to stand up for myself, even when it's difficult. One thing that stood out to me during this whole ordeal was a conversation I had with my husband early in our relationship. He had told me about a cousin of his who had married a woman from a different culture. They had faced similar challenges, and in the end, the cousin had chosen to follow his family's wishes and divorced his wife. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now I see that it was a warning sign of what was to come. In the end, I learned a lot about myself and what I want in a relationship. I realized that I need a partner who will stand by me and support me, even when it's difficult. I also learned that I can't change who I am to fit someone else's expectations. I need to be true to myself and find someone who loves me for who I am. Thank you for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day!